Have you ever just stopped to think about how absolutely wild it is that you can look at these little squiggles on a screen and your brain just instantly creates images and feelings and entire worlds? I mean, reading, writing, speaking, it feels so automatic, but it's actually one of the most complex, delicate ballets your brain performs. So how in the world does it all work? Let's pop the hood and take a look.
And this is our map for the journey. It's a diagram showing all the key language areas in the brain. Think of it as our blueprint as we start exploring the incredible machinery that lets us talk, read, and write. So, let's dive into the brain's language map. Now, the first thing you have to know is that language isn't just in one little spot. Nope. It's a whole network of specialized regions, kind of like different departments in a company, all working together in perfect sync. But what happens when one of those departments suddenly goes offline? Well, it turns out, by studying what goes wrong when this network gets damaged, we can learn a ton about how it's all supposed to work when everything is going right. First up, let's see what happens when the ability to read just fails. Imagine waking up one morning and all the words on this screen suddenly look like a completely alien language. That's the reality for someone with a condition called alexia. So simply put, alexia is when you acquire the inability to read. And what's crucial here is that it's not a vision problem. The eyes see the words just fine. The breakdown is happening deeper inside, in the brain's ability to actually translate those symbols into meaning.
And it's not just one simple condition either. It gets way more specific. Some types are linked up with bigger language problems. But here's the most fascinating distinction. Can you imagine losing the ability to read, but you can still write perfectly fine? Or, in another case, losing both at the same time? It all comes down to exactly where the damage is.
And this is just incredible. This slide shows you just how precise the brain's wiring is. If you get damage in one specific spot, the left angular gyrus, which you can think of as a reading and writing converter, you lose both abilities. That's what you see on the left. But if the damage is somewhere else, and it just cuts the connection between your vision centers and language centers, a person can still write perfectly. They just can't read back what they've written. It's like they're sending a message in a bottle that they themselves can never open.
All right, now for the other side of the coin. What happens when writing is the thing that fails? This is a condition called agraphia.
Agraphia is the loss of the ability to write. And again, this isn't a problem with your hand. The person knows exactly what they want to say, but that neural connection you need to actually form letters and words, it's been severed.
And just like alexia, agraphia has its own different forms. As you can see here, sometimes it's just part of a larger language problem. Other times, it's about the physical planning of the letters. And with constructional agraphia, the writing becomes spatially chaotic. Words just floating all over the page because the brain's internal grid is just gone.
And if we look back at our map, we can see the key players. Areas like the angular gyrus and the parietal lobe. They act as a crucial crossroads. This is the spot where the brain merges the idea of a letter with the super complex motor plan you need to actually write it. It's a meeting point for language, vision, and action. We've covered reading and writing, so now, what happens when speaking fails? This brings us to apraxia of speech, which is a breakdown not in the language itself, but in the physical act of talking.
The technical term is cortical agraphia, and it's a motor speech disorder. The brain knows the exact word it wants to say, but it can't create and send the right plan for the lips, tongue, and jaw to produce the sounds. The message from the brain gets scrambled on the way to the mouth. So what does this actually sound like? Well, a person with apraxia might have a really hard time with longer words. Their speech can lose its natural rhythm, and this part is key. Their mistakes are inconsistent. They might say a word perfectly 1 minute and then be totally unable to say it the next.
And it is so important to distinguish this from something you might have heard of called Broca's aphasia. With apraxia, as you can see here, the underlying language is totally fine. Comprehension, grammar, it's all there. The problem is one of motor planning. But with Broca's aphasia, the issue is much deeper. It's a struggle with the language processing itself, finding the right words and putting them in the right order.
So, after looking at how reading, writing, and speaking can break down in these incredibly specific ways, what's the big picture? Well, it all comes back to seeing language as this beautifully interconnected system.
And our map really illustrates this perfectly, doesn't it? You've got Broca's area for producing speech, Wernicke's for understanding it, the angular gyrus integrating it all. None of them are solo artists. They're a tightly knit orchestra, and their constant communication is what creates the symphony of language.
If you take just one thing away from this explainer, let it be this. Language is not a single location in your brain. It is a network, a fragile, intricate, and deeply interconnected web that defines so much of what makes us human.
Which leaves us with a final, kind of deep thought. We see our ability to communicate as absolutely fundamental to who we are. So what does it say about us that this most human of all our traits relies on such a fragile and intricate architecture?